Cheryl Nici tells us about one of the cases she'll never forget. Not just a parking ticket, but where shit really hit the fan. Something really bad had happened.
There was so many of them, but there's one that will probably stay with me forever. You guys can relate to this. There are those cases that, God, you wish you could forget, but that haunt you for the rest of your life. We got a call. This is when I was working down in the fan district. Guy that I went through the academy with, he was the log unit, and I was there as backup. I want to say it was late at night, early in the morning, like somewhere between like maybe 11 p.m., 2 or 3 a.m. And it was called in as a B&E in progress, breaking and entering in progress.
Welcome to Game of Crimes. Hello, everybody. This is the most interesting podcast on the internet, and we are the most interesting people on the internet. My name's Morgan Wright, and I'm here literally with my partner in crime,
Steve Murphy, but you can call me Murph.
Mr. Hackalung, Mr. I still got a cough. I was supposed to be moving to Florida, and it was supposed to be so much better for me, and here I am still hacking up hairballs and lungs.
Oh, it's I don't know if it's bronchitis now or what, but it's kicking my butt.
If it's bronchitis, dude, you got the longest case of bronchitis I've ever heard of.
Well, the first thing I think was a sinus infection, but hey, we're getting better. And you know what? It's warm here. I'm sitting here in shorts and a t-shirt. So
yes, just a flesh wound. Yeah, you traitorous bastard. Anyway, hey guys, thanks for joining us. Hey, I tell you what, we got so many remarks about Claudia and just her persistence, her will to live, and just the fact is that just her the way she accepts it and the way she's moving on. I mean, the way, like you talked about, she laughed. She's just love to hear that. You can hear the smile, when she talks and then the laughter. Just great.
You know what? That's going to be a lifelong learning experience for her. It's something she'll never forget. But her positive attitude, it's like, man, she has moved on. This guy didn't get anything over on Claudia. I'm just so freaking proud of her. I can't wait to meet her this summer.
Yeah, we'll be down there for the Southern California Gang Conference with Alex Collins. He'll be down there, from episode 24,
Right.
the sand shootout with Chris Dorner. So we've got a lot of interesting stuff. But speaking of interesting stuff, let's do just a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the fun stuff. So hey, head on over to that Apple review, give us 5 stars or whatever platform you are. I think we're earning it, man. When you listen to the quality of the people we bring on in the stories, folks, I believe we have earned the right to ask you for 5 stars.
Well, that's
right,
our
Murph?
story. That's our story, and we're sticking to it.
Damn right. We're from the government. We're here to help. So just it really does help us out, though. Trust us. And then head on over to our website, gameofcrimespodcast.com. That's where we put merchandise, the mailing list, which will notify you. And we will be notifying you of a Christmas gift we're going to give you. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. Follow us on the social medias at Game of Crimes on Twitter, Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook, and on the Instagram. And then this is where I wanted to save it, Steve. I decided that we shall give the gift that everybody deserves this Christmas season, the gift of us, right?
Yeah, you thought you're going to get a lump of coal. You're getting us.
You're getting us. And guess what we're going to do? Normally for everybody, if you're not on Patreon, obviously you need to be, patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Normally our narcometer, when we do, we vote on our narcometer and we do our monthly live stream, that's usually reserved for, it's for Guardian of the Realm and Warden of the Throne. But what we're doing is we're going to open up this month's narcometer and our live stream to everybody, whether you're on Patreon or not, no matter what level you're at. We just want to show you guys what you're missing. And so we're going to do this on Facebook. It's going to be in our Game of Crimes, just so that we gave you the address, facebook.com/Game of Crimes podcast. It's going to be, you don't have to be a member of anything. It's free. The page is free to join. That's where we're going to do it. So we're going to do it Wednesday.
Yeah.
Wednesday, December 22nd at 8 p.m. Eastern. Now, some of you guys out there get a little bit confused. That's 8 p.m. Eastern time, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. And I don't even know what time it is in Hawaii. And if you're in Hawaii, I don't want to hear from you anyway, because it's actually even warmer and better than what it is in Florida. Jeez.
Jealous.
So remember this. Put it down on your calendars. Wednesday, December 22nd, a date which will live in infamy. At 8 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be doing our live stream, our review of the greatest Christmas movie ever made, Die Hard. And I've got a couple special things that I'm going to surprise you with. Murph's already seen part of it. The rest of it is coming. It'll be here for this episode.
Yeah, I'm not going to give up your surprise, but well, let's just say don't expect too much, everybody.
That would be you. You moved to Florida, geez.
Hey, I'll put
Can't
on a
even
clean
get dressed
t-shirt.
anymore. Well, I'm glad it's clean. That's the only thing that's clean this time. So just head on over there, patreon.com/gameofcrimes. And it is the best place in the world to be. If you want to just do a pause for the cause, paypal.com, use our email, gameofcrimespodcast@gmail.com or paypal.me/gameofcrimes, whatever it makes it easier for you. Now, quick disclaimer. This is a show about crime. We talk about bad people doing bad things and bad people doing bad things to good people. We take the story seriously, but
we never take ourselves seriously. And that's what makes it so much fun.
That's right. And speaking of fun, guess what time it is, Murph?
Oh, no.
Let's go faster. It's time for
Small Town Police Blotters.
You're still too damn slow, man. Still too damn slow.
You can't keep up.
Oh, dude. Okay, man. Okay, this first one, speaking of not keeping up, this is somebody, man in stolen car arrested after asking officers for directions. Dunn police charged a Fayetteville man with driving a stolen vehicle after the man reportedly stopped to ask police for directions. The driver of the vehicle, identified as Rodney Antoine Brown of Fayetteville, initially was just asking for directions. They gave him directions. This is the location of the jail, dude.
He now has an AKA called Dumbass.
Dumbass from Dunn. The Dunn Dumbass. Asking police for directions.
Is this North Carolina?
It doesn't say. I'm almost wondering Fayetteville. It might be that, or it could be Arkansas. Or as they say over there, it should be called Arkansas. We've had that discussion with Mike Neal, episode 8.
Yes,
it's
we did.
Arkansas,
and I wear my Arkansas shirt in memory of him. So
that's right.
But there's a Dunn, North Carolina too. Is why I thought that.
Well, we'll do some digging. We shall investigate this and get to the bottom of it. But getting to the bottom of it, Steve, this is just the headline alone. The story is irrelevant. Just the headline alone. Man competent enough to be declared insane.
Wow. That's not an oxymoron, is it? You think I knew big words like that, did you?
Well, I sent it to you right before the episode. Said this is how you pronounce it. So, a diagnosed schizophrenic was accused of attacking a Great Smoky Mountains National Park ranger. Is now medicated enough to be mentally competent enough to be declared insane.
Oh, that doesn't even make any sense. You talk about taking it to a whole different level. There you go.
Well, here his federal defender said, I still think there is some confusion, but I think at this stage we're not objecting to that finding. The defendant sheet said, well, he felt fairly good, but I'd still like to use my right to remain silent. Yeah, no.
Please do. Please do. Unbelievable.
Oh, man. I know. Unbelievable. Hey, but this next story made me think of you, Murph.
Oh, good.
This comes to us from Verona, Wisconsin. Population 13,233. Salute. Guess what, Murph? At 4:51 p.m., a high school student attempted to touch a police officer while waiting at the high school for a bus, asking the officer, do you even lift?
Touch him where? Touch him where?
It gets back to our question from, who was it? Rick Jacobson says, what does Murph do exactly at the gym? Do you even lift at the gym, Murph?
Well, that wasn't the question. It's just, what do I do at the gym? My wife keeps telling me I need to get in shape. I said, baby, round is a shape.
Round is a shape. Round is a shape. Well, guess what, Murph? This next one, I actually have some experience with a very similar type of situation. This comes to us somewhere Rock Hill. Don't know where it's at. Just a clipping I have. Police were informed February 25th by a resident of the 1000 block of Raritan Drive that a family in the area is taking over the minds of local dogs and turning them against their owners. Police were advised by the person that the only way to protect the dog is to install an anti-force field on its head.
There you go. Good luck with that. Get that big Rottweiler, put that helmet on him, see what happens.
Oh, man. In Salina, Kansas, when I was a police officer in Salina, Kansas, we had a lady who believed that she was on South 9th Street. I don't want to give her name away because she's probably since passed away. She was crazy as a fox, but she really believed that there were remote control ball bearings in her house.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, some of them floating around in her head there. And when she shook her head, that wasn't muddy water.
It
Those ball
wasn't, no.
bearings rolling around in there.
Hey, so, Steve, time to keep the streak alive.
Absolutely.
Guess what? What year was it?
Woo-hoo, here we go.
All right. This one is actually reported to us in the Tribune out of Scranton, Pennsylvania on October 3rd. However, it comes to us from Glasgow, Scotland, land of my ancestors.
All right.
So Glasgow again torn by frenzy rioting. You know, obviously William Wallace is apparently sacking York. Unemployment demonstrators use hammers and hatchets in wild attacks on police. Disturbances raged for more than 5 hours. Just a quick couple paragraphs. On October 3rd, Glasgow was torn last night and this morning by wild unemployment disorders during which demonstrators used hammers, hatchets, and anything they could lay their hands on to fight mounted police attempting to prevent looting the shops. The disturbances starting at 8:30 last night when mounted men charged a group of demonstrators outside the High Court in Jail Square raged for more than 5 hours. Scores were injured.
I'll imagine. Holy cow.
In Glasgow, Scotland. So, Steve, you have to tell me.
Okay.
Was it October 3rd? 1941, 1921, or 1931?
Well, let's see. Let's go with 1931.
You got that one.
Hey, look at that. How about that? You know, Glasgow, what a beautiful place. That whole country of Scotland, I love it. That's one of the prettiest places I've ever been.
It is great. I would love to get there. I have not had the chance to go to Ireland or Scotland. Been all over the UK. I mean England, but I just got to get there. My sister went there, so yeah, I've got to. Just like you say, just the Bothies and the locks. That's where the Loch Ness monster comes from.
Well,
but,
Edinburgh, what a beautiful city, and you've got to see Edinburgh Castle at nighttime, sitting up on the hill there. They've got it all lit up really nice. It's a beautiful place. People are really nice there.
It's a beautiful place. Well. Speaking of beautiful places, which is Northern Virginia, until the traitorous bastard left me and went to Florida.
Hold on. Let's not just bypass the fact that I got this right today. Woohoo! Let's celebrate.
Even a blind squirrel finds a nut, Murph.
I work with a nut. Okay, go ahead.
All right. So, hey, but this one is somebody I know. Got to know her through a deal that we're working on about some of the releases that the parole board were doing in Virginia, including when they released a convicted cop killer. He had shot a police officer in the head 5 times, was allowed to go out. And I ended up meeting her through that because she really got a very interesting story. And it's Cheryl Nici. And you're going to see that Cheryl doesn't have a Virginian accent. We're just going to let you guess where the accent is from.
I was going to say she's not from the South, not our
not
South.
From
anyway.
the South, so not like we got one coming up. Somebody who was transplanted from Maryland to Georgia. That'll be our episode following Tricia Cannon, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
There you go.
Cheryl, actually, Steve, this one is another story. It's kind of like Claudia. This is somebody in her own way, because she's unique in her own way about how she responded. She was shot, ambushed in the face, and had she not been bending down to look at something, we might not be having this story. But it was just that mirror. But by this time, this guy had already killed 3 people. He's a spree killer, shot and wounded a sheriff's deputy, and then for reasons that you will come to understand during the podcast, decided that he wanted to kill her. And so this is something. Her story is about the same thing about how do you survive that? What do you do to come back from it? I mean, it's just, again, it's just one of those things is here is somebody who, Murph, I mean, there's a lot of places to get shot, but you think shot in the face. I mean, how do you come back from that?
Right. Yeah. And, you know, her attitude, I mean, you're going to hear her talk about her cute dimples now, which we call scars.
And let me tell you, she's got attitude with the capital A.
Oh, yeah. But you know what? All these years later, she is still doing everything she can to help her fellow man. And she is so admirable. She's like Claudia. She's like Alex. She's like Joe Piersante, all the people we've had on, Kevin Stevens, that, you know, have been wounded in the line of duty and have come back 100-fold, not letting those son of a bitches, the cowards that pulled the trigger on them, not letting them take control of their lives. It just makes you so proud to talk to these people, to get to know them a little bit. I can't say enough good things about them. And Cheryl Nici, I love that last name, Nici.
It's going to appeal to some of our people like Sandy Salvato and Salvato and, you know, Fred Nicolosi, and some of our people on the podcast whose names end in a vowel. There's got to be a mob. And Steve, I think there is a mob connection. But before we find out the mob connection, I got to ask yourself one question. Are you ready to play the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all, the game of crimes?
Once again, everyone, get in, sit down, shut up, and hold on. Let's hear Cheryl's story.
Folks, again, this is a high honor. We have got some good stuff coming up for you. Before we get started, this is the best podcast on the internet when you want to hear about the real stuff that's happening and where you want to hear the real stuff that's going on. And I am the host, well, one of the hosts. I am the co-host, Morgan Wright, here with literally with my partner in crime.
Steve Murphy here. And you know what? We know what makes Game of Crimes as the best podcast out there is because we don't try to tell somebody else's story.
Nope.
We bring them on and you get to hear it from the horse's mouth. This is what really goes on. Nobody's twist is on it. You hear what really happened.
And we don't really have a horse on that. It's just a euphemism. That's just a saying, right? So, hey, but what we have on is somebody from my area, from the great Commonwealth of Virginia. She was a Richmond police officer. You're going to hear her story. We actually did a video of this quite a while back, but now we're bringing it to the podcast. And so I want to welcome to the podcast a fellow Virginian, former Richmond police officer, and all-around good person, Cheryl O'Connell. Cheryl.
Woo-hoo! Welcome, Cheryl.
How you guys doing? Actually, I still go by Nici.
You still go by Nici?
Nici.
Yep.
Well, then quit putting O'Connell then on your emails then, damn it.
Hey, it's a good Irish name. You don't want to lose a good Irish name.
That's a good Irish name.
I happily lost the good Irish name.
I smell a divorce in here somewhere, so we'll get into that a little bit. But as you can tell by the accent, Cheryl is not from Virginia originally. So we're going to get into that. So Cheryl, you're living in Southern Virginia. I'm up here in Northern Virginia, but still, great area, great stuff. But you originally didn't start out here. I'm going to guess, and I know I'm not going to guess. I know you're a little bit farther north. So let's talk about where did you come from and what made you start in this profession we call law enforcement?
I grew up in a suburb of Boston, Massachusetts called Malden, and moved to Saugus when I was in my freshman year of high school down here, my final year of junior high up there. Small city, had one elementary school, actually 2 junior highs, 1 high school. Everybody knew everybody. Had 3 brothers, older brothers, an Italian father, little short mom, and very family-oriented community. If you misbehaved, the neighbors would whoop your butt and then call your parents and you'd get it whooped again. It wasn't child abuse, it was discipline.
That's right. And it's the same way in the South. Sure. I grew up the same way.
Yeah. So, ironically, my classes, our elementary school got a little big, and my classes in the 6th grade were held in a parochial school building next door to the elementary school. So we would see the nuns, man, and the rulers and the whole bit, and laugh at the poor kids going to parochial school.
Hey, there's a lot of folks out here that have gone that route, Catholic school, and yes, the rulers with the nuns, that is the stuff of legend and lore. But obviously, it didn't deter you from, wanting to go into law enforcement. So you thought that, and you said, "Hey, I could be a nun, but I could have a uniform on, and I could whack people on the knuckles with ruler in a figurative sense, right?"
Oh, absolutely. But no, none of that for me. No fun. We, as I said, we had a small community. Everybody knew all the police officers. Generally, as a rule, you didn't see the police in your neighborhood. The community pretty much took care of its own issues, looked out for each other. Occasionally, you'd see the police, but very different.
What's your first memory of like the police when you saw them there? I mean, in terms of like uniforms, people, what when you were growing up, because everybody knows too, depending on what part of your country you're in, the type of policing that is done is far different, and the way they handle things is far different. So what was it like growing up in a burb of Boston, with the cops there at the time? What was it like?
up until I moved in the ninth grade to a different locality, everybody knew their neighborhood police officer. We knew the detectives. They were part of the community. Uh, had a close family friend, Detective Ted Green with the Malden Police Department, and he stayed in touch and was a key factor in me pursuing a career in law enforcement. And you need to remember, going back into the 1960s, female police officers, especially in Massachusetts, oh my goodness, that was unheard of. And from the time I was 6 years old, I always used to say, I want to be a policeman when I grow up. And everybody would laugh and go, oh, isn't that cute? Little Peanut wants to be a policeman. Um, we were basically taught that, if you had an issue with somebody, you had a good old fashioned fist fight, and you were usually best friends the next day.
Hmm.
With three older brothers, I was told, if somebody picked on me, male or female, I better whoop their butt. And if I didn't, my brothers would whoop my butt.
There you go.
And
Makes you tough, doesn't it?
makes you a survivor. And
There you
ironically,
go.
um, I only had one fist fight with a female, and that was in high school because she was kind of expressing an interest in my man, and that was a no-no.
Oh, throw down. We got a throwdown
Well,
going on here.
how many fist fights did you have with non-females?
Oh golly.
All the rest of them.
Yeah, because we're trained criminal investigators. We heard that statement. I only had one fist fight with a female, as opposed to I only had
Yeah.
one fist fight in high school. So how many boys did you whoop up on?
That's right.
Three.
That's right. All right.
And I won all of them.
Outstanding.
Oh my God! Well, that's going to serve you well later, obviously. Because
Oh,
you got to
yeah.
be a scrapper.
I want to add this. They started it, and you know that golden rule. You don't call me names. You don't say nothing about my family, my mom. I tell you, you better watch it. You don't, you keep going. One real vivid one was he was a neighbor growing up in elementary school, and he wanted to date me in junior high. And I said no. And he said some pretty unfavorable things, and all I did was teach him a little respect.
There you go.
Never got suspended. I was smart enough to usually keep things off school property.
Usually.
See, all of your statements have caveats. I only had a fight, fist fight with one girl in high school, and usually. So
Yeah. That's
Officer
great.
Nici,
That's
so you're learning all of this stuff. So even though you said you wanted to be a cop at 6, when did it really start becoming reality to you? I mean, what was your first association with them from a more of a realistic standpoint? Because I know you're going through high school, you talk about those things. When do you actually start doing cop stuff? I mean, at the first time you got a chance to do any kind of cop stuff.
Well, I never liked bullies. I was always a bully buster. Bear in mind, I was 90 pounds, 5'4", me in high school. And to this day, there's one of my former classmates who remembers this huge girl. I mean, she had to be about 5'8", 250 pounds, and the girl she was picking on was barely 5 feet, maybe 80 pounds, and she's picking on her in the restroom. And I walk in and I say, hey, so-and-so, you want to pick on somebody? Pick on me. Hit me. Come on, right here. And I pointed to my cheek. I said, you started, I will finish it, witch, or something like that. And the bully backed down, but it protected my fellow classmate. And to this day, I stay in touch with that classmate, the shorter, smaller girl, and she still remembers that.
Well, I noticed you didn't say, why don't you pick on somebody your own size? Because you weren't her size, were you?
No, I was barely just a few inches bigger and a few pounds heavier than the other girl, but again,
A little feistier.
the way we were brought up in the Italian home and with the three older brothers, and you always look out for each other, and if somebody's being picked on, even if you get your butt whooped, you stand your ground and you handle business. You never back down. And I always hated bullies, and I always kind of was a bully buster. Not that I like to fight, but if I had to, I had no problem.
We know 3 boys and 1 girl. We're taking, and that's only in high school. So Murph is keeping track now. We've got the Cheryl board over here. So
That's it. And my money's on Cheryl. I'll tell you right now.
yeah, well, just like Pam Barn, I don't think I want to piss you off. So let's we'll talk about that later, and we'll talk about weapons and stuff like that, all the good stuff later. But when we did the pre-call, and like Sarah, you and I have talked before, and a lot of stuff going on. You started getting to the point of when did you actually able to start putting your desire for law enforcement into practice? When did it start becoming real?
I worked full time all through high school in Sears and Roebuck, and I got transferred over to sales, and I would help catch shoplifters. I was in the manager trainee program, and I decided I wanted to get involved with loss prevention. I ended up getting a job with the old Bradley Stop and Shop as a loss prevention agent working outside of Boston in the Somerville store. And we had some wild times there.
Of course, because they're also referred to as stop and robs, not just stop and shop.
That's right.
Right. I'll be honest with you. I could not work in the grocery area because a lot of times I was catching older people stealing canned food just to eat, or people that had no money. And I was spending a good portion of my paycheck buying the food for them. I mean, they were the real deal. It wasn't the people stuffing, a bunch of roasts and beers down their booster girdles, okay? It was real people trying to survive, trying to feed their cat. And the social worker in me, that's why I got into police work, is I really wanted to help. When I got transferred over to retail, that was a different deal.
I love hearing what your reason for going into law enforcement, because that's the vast majority of law enforcement professionals have the same attitude. They just want to help people. It's not about walking around being a tough guy or putting people in jail. It's just you want to help your fellow man.
What sure as hell wasn't for the paycheck back then either, right? Or the benefits.
Oh Lord, no! I could have made more waitressing anywhere. Waffle House. We didn't have Waffle House up there, but Waffle House.
Those are some fine victuals and some fine eating. If you've ever been to a Waffle House at 3:00 in the morning in the South, it is an experience. Let me tell you.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of loss prevention, which is, stopping shoplifter, what's the most what's the most wildest thing somebody, or, who did you catch that it's just a story that you remember to today? Like, we all remember some of our stuff. We had guys that had stuff, like you say, I was just thinking of that, stuffing meats and steaks and stuff. They come in wearing these spandex things or whatever, and they think nobody notices. They come in looking like, a toothpick, and they go out looking like Santa Claus. It's like, no, pal, come over here. So any fun things you remember from that time on loss prevention?
This was kind of funny, but it didn't involve stealing. It was somebody kind of doing their own thing on the stuffed bunny display. We had closed circuit TV and watched this guy sexually gratifying himself all over the stuffed Easter bunnies. And
now, was he having sexual relations with the bunny or just himself?
Just himself. He just sprayed the bunnies repeatedly.
Oh.
And
okay.
Testifying, bringing the evidence into court and testifying in court was one of the funniest things I think I can really remember about that job.
When you say bring the evidence to court, you're talking about the video, right?
No. I had to bag up the bunnies and I brought them in.
Nah, couldn't pay me for that one. No, sorry, man. Call the hazmat team. I am not touching that thing.
I didn't touch that thing. I just touched the bunnies and I wore gloves.
So he was doing some funny bunny stuff, and oh God, oh man.
Oh, he was very interesting.
Okay.
I'm not going anywhere with that.
Well, anybody who does that in public is interesting in a clinical point of view. I mean, what made him interesting otherwise?
He just didn't see anything wrong with what he had done, and he was offended that I was watching him on camera. But then when he's telling me how offended he is, he's like getting really excited talking to me about it. And
Oh,
yeah, I was like, wow.
Dude, your picture's going up on the department wall. We're going to be tracking you for the next few years. So,
oh, sick
I said
puppies out there.
shoplifting. Yeah, oh my gosh. Well, he was in the wrong place. He thought he was in a bank. He was making a deposit instead of a withdrawal. So
There you go.
Mm,
you would, but you just didn't do loss prevention, right? So the funny thing too was you wanted to be a cop, but your mom wanted you to be something a little bit more traditional in that time for women. What was it?
Oh, goodness. And you know me well enough to know I am not a secretary. She wanted me to be a secretary, maybe a nurse, but she really wanted me to be a secretary. Going to high school, working a full time job, a part time job. I was a library aide in the children's room at the local library. Mom and stepdad split up. We had moved to Saugus, Mass when I was in the ninth grade. Mom got remarried. That didn't last very long. So they had split up. My mom became ill. We moved to an apartment. So I was pretty much paying the bills and everything from age 16 on up. And I don't know if I should admit to this or not. I was kind of skipped Barbie dolls somewhere there. And that's when the drinking age was like 18, and I always ran with an older crowd. So I would go to school, I would work all day, I would get off work and go out for a drink or two with my coworkers who were older. If I had to go right home after work, I usually ended up sneaking out the back door, which was in my bedroom, and stuffing my bed. So it looked like I was in there asleep.
Oh, I've never. It's that really kids do that. I never had any of my kids do that. Oh my goodness, this is something new I've just learned.
I was probably a bigger challenge for my mom and a wilder child than my three brothers put together.
Is that because you were the youngest and you could get away with everything, or were you just that personality? Were you just that free spirit that just is going to go out and do their thing?
Oh, no, I'm the free spirit. Had nothing to do with being the baby of the family because I was the only girl, and there was a higher expectation for me.
Wow. Um, so you were sneaking out, going to the bar, but you ended up like moving out, right? You got an apartment over at Lynn, and at some point, you started going to college, right? Taking some criminal justice classes.
Right. Well, I was still staying with my mom. I started community college in the secretary program. I was paying my way through. My dad was helping me out a little bit. I took like typing and shorthand just to get into the program, but my electives were criminal justice
there you go.
because that was my plan. Okay, Mom, you want me to be a secretary? We'll play the game. I'm going to be a cop. So, community college was just too much with working. I moved out, got my own place. My rent was like $200 a month. I moved into a 6 apartment unit where everybody in the building was under 21. Needless to
That
say,
couldn't be good. That couldn't be good.
oh, we were like family. We were like family. We had dinner at somebody different's house apartment, every night of the week. And then on Sunday, we just kind of did our own thing, or we'd have a cookout. Or that was a pretty interesting first apartment sort of deal.
Yeah, and you know what? Not many people in their first apartment. Um, your manager kind of had a touch of the firebug, didn't he, for those apartments?
Oh, he was more than that. There was a guy I went to high school with. He graduated the year ahead of me. He lived in the apartment next to me with his girlfriend who graduated the year under me. And she woke up one morning and the landlord was at the foot of her bed smiling, just looking at her sleeping, smiling. She was terrified. And I'm like, yeah, he knows better than to pull that in my place. He comes in my place, he's going to be a sorry SOB.
He's not the same guy at that was with the bunny rabbits, is he?
Oh, no. Mm-mm.
They could have been brothers, though, Steve. Could have been brothers.
Yeah, seriously. Ironically, there had been a fire at this building before we moved in. Everything was covered up with carpet. And remember the old paneling? Had paneling and, you know, but the location was good, the price was right, no problem qualifying. Went down to the bank, got $1,000 loan, and got my own apartment. Anyway, He one evening, I believe it was a Sunday, we were all doing our thing and hanging out, and we heard this noise down in the basement. And a couple of the guys grabbed baseball bats, and of course I was right there with them. Like, no, you ain't going down there alone. I'm coming with you. Um, and we found two guys drunk with cans of gasoline in the basement, getting ready to start a fire. Ironically, we live right across, diagonally across from a fire station. So, we confronted the landlord and called the police and the whole bit. He sold the property to what we call a straw, or another owner took it over on paper. I said, you know what? I'm not hanging out until this happens. What if he does this when we're asleep one night? Or what if this happens, I'm out of here. So I talked to my dad and I went to live with um, my dad's girlfriend, who later became my stepmom, back in Malden, just till I could get up on my feet and get another apartment and, figure out what was going on.
How old are you? How old were you during this time, Cheryl?
Oh, golly. I would say it was 18 to 19.
And you said you were in Lynn, Massachusetts at that time, right?
Yeah.
How big a town? How big of a town was Lynn?
Lynn was a lot bigger than Malden. They used to say, Lynn, the city of sin. You never come out the way you went in. Lynn was Lynn was pretty high crime, a lot of drugs. We had, actually, this is something that will stick with me forever. One of my dear classmates, somebody that I hung out with, that I partied with in high school, apparently he had been seeing a biker's girlfriend, and they found him cut up in multiple plastic bags in the dumpster right by the fire station, diagonally across from the apartment I grew up in. The apartment I moved to. I will never forget the day they found him. We had a lot of biker gangs, and my best friend in high school, she used to babysit for the Hells Angels, who had a house about 2 blocks down the street from where I lived with my mother. And unbeknown to my mom, I used to go down and help her babysit when they were going on runs and stuff.
Did you know? I mean, you knew that they were the Hells Angels at that time?
Hell yeah.
Hey, now, did they ever solve the case of your friend?
I don't think so.
Man,
That's horrible. That's horrible. You got a first law enforcement job during this time too, didn't you? When you were about 18?
I was doing the loss prevention, so I had special police powers. I was in Medford, Somerville, and then I supervised Watertown.
Did you go to you were with Malden PD there for a while, right?
Well, as a matron, I worked in the courts and worked with the police department as what they called a matron, because they didn't have any female court officers or any female police officers. And when they had somebody arrested who was a female, someone would need to pat them down, would need to sit with them maybe. Transporting a female incarcerated individual from one court to another, to the jail, to the court to another facility. I would get to go and ride along.
Did you get any training for that?
Hands on, pretty much, yeah.
And did you carry a weapon?
Officially, no.
I'm gonna go with caveats
Here we
again.
go, caveats again. We're going to start calling you Cheryl Caveat Nici. Yeah. So now, let me ask you this, though. You said there weren't a lot of women police officers and stuff at the time. What kind of uniform did you have to wear? Were you allowed to wear pants, or did you have to wear a skirt?
No, I think I wore, if I'm remembering correctly, I think I wore like black pants and like a white polo shirt. I'm not even sure recollecting back that I had any type of required clothing. I just had to wear something that wasn't too, back then it was Jordache jeans and platform shoes and
Big hair and parachute pants. I know.
the spandex bodysuits and all your gold and your hair all
Well, hell,
puffed out.
you and Murphy could share some outfits then, because he's got those too, man. He's got his spandex, I caught Pablo, outfit, and it's all
Hey,
red.
don't say
By the
that
way,
like it's a bad thing. Don't
yeah,
say that like
it's
it's a bad
red
thing.
though. It's Target red.
Actually, I started learning to shoot when I was 16. And again, the family friend, the detective, he's the one who taught me. He's the one who gave me my first weapon.
Was that Ted Green?
Mm-hmm.
And where was he a detective at?
Malden Police.
And how big of a town was Malden?
Back then, I'm not really sure of the population, but like I said, we had one police station, two junior highs, one high school, one elementary school. It wasn't that big. And he was the stepfather of one of my friends that I went to school with. So, like I said, it was just a very close knit community. A lot of families living in the same city. Everybody knew everybody.
But you kind of gravitated. I mean, you kept moving up through that. So you start off as matron, but you also went over to the hospital, right? As special police at the hospital.
Yes, I was their very first female special police officer on their hospital police department at the Malden Hospital, the hospital on the hill.
Now, what kind of so again, any training or is that all OJT as well?
There was some OJT, but there was also, some classes that I had to take, and
Just basically like don't get the hospital sued, don't get us sued. You know.
yeah, you had to follow policy and procedures. So that was the biggest thing. Sometimes you'd be out in the parking lot. Primarily, I worked the emergency room, and that was a lot of fun.
That got to be interesting on the weekends, especially. I'll bet.
Oh, yeah.
Any guys in naked bunny outfits show up, say, "Hey, I remember you."
No, but there was kind of a funny incident there.
You just going to leave us hanging, or are you going to tell us?
No, you got to tell us now.
I was dating one of the interns that lived on hospital grounds and hospital housing, and he forgot. I have keys to his apartment. So one night doing my rounds, I decided to surprise him, and I was the one who got surprised. He was
Oh, that's
he was
bad.
a
That's bad.
player, and one of the nurses that I was friendly with, I found out that they were kind of friendly, actively friendly.
Flagrante delicto, in flagrante delicto. So you basically performed coitus interruptus.
Ah, yes.
Oh, that had to be fun.
I was just doing my rounds and making sure everybody was safe.
And happy.
I kind of ruined the moment.
I'll bet you did. It's kind of tough to perform after that. After somebody walks in, your girlfriend, and says, "Hi, honey, I'm home." Oh my goodness. That's kind of the outside of the hospital. So inside of the hospital, do you have a similar story to anything with a victim that showed up or any big incident that happened while you were on duty there, other than the boyfriend who exercised extremely poor judgment?
Kind of as an initiation, my coworkers locked me in the morgue when I was new. And, I was going to tough it out. I wasn't going to call on the radio for help or anything. I turned the lights on. And because of what happened, I really can't share the outcome because there was some liability involved. And I don't want to.
Although I got to tell you, though, some of the worst practical jokes, and there's a ton of them out on YouTube, especially Cops Are the Worst. You see somebody laying there like in the morgue or whatever, and some nurse comes walking by and the guy lifts up. They do it on Halloween, the pranks. And I'm telling you, just the. Or the person that was laying in the casket, they show up and he lifts up out of the casket, oh, like Frankenstein. So, right. Well, let's talk about then how. I mean, you did the hospital police. I mean, here's the funny part: you saved one guy's life, you almost put the other guy in the morgue. You could have swapped
I was
places.
just going to say the same thing. He doesn't know how close he came, does he?
Yeah. Why was he shot 6 times? Because that's all the
That's
bullets
right.
I had. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, during this time, I had started to take classes at Northeastern University for criminal justice, and I was going part-time. Ironically, that's how I ended up in Richmond, because Richmond came up and recruited at Northeastern University.
And where was Northeastern at?
Their primary campus was in Boston, but they also had some suburban campuses. But I remember that they did their recruitment at the main university in Boston. And I attended because back during that time, you had to be 21 to be a police officer. You couldn't be beyond a certain age. They had age requirements. And we were dealing with something called Proposition 2.5, where they were closing police stations, firehouses, schools, and laying off police firefighters and teachers. So here I am, I'm 22 now, and they have age requirements. I don't want to go past the age requirement, which I can't remember if it was 25, 27.
You're kidding. So you couldn't, you had to be 21 to apply, but you couldn't be older than 25 or 26 to apply?
If I'm remembering correctly on the cutoff, yeah, it was pretty young.
You guys do weird stuff in the state of Massachusetts there, or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's one of the other commonwealths.
I started the process in February of 1982, made a few trips by Amtrak back and forth to Richmond, and got hired and arrived here with 6 boxes, a briefcase, and a duffel bag in June of 1982.
Because you were coming down and you didn't know anybody in there, did you bring anything with you, like maybe a stuffed bunny or anything to keep you company?
Never had another bunny in her life.
No, I didn't. Just, clothes, makeup, some pictures, the important stuff, the stuff I was going to need, just kind of starting over.
But you had applied a couple other places though before Richmond, right?
I applied to Amherst, Massachusetts. They had a big university out there. Didn't get on there. I had also applied for Revere Police, and I will never forget my boyfriend, who was a Revere police officer, telling me that if I ever got on the police department, that I would be doing nothing beyond writing tickets on Broadway. Needless to say, that relationship was short-lived. Nice Italian guy, spoke Italian.
But he obviously thought your place was in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant, serving up Sunday dinner.
Well, he should have known better. He worked off-duty security at a bar on the beach where I worked the door. And, I would be the one to card people. It was a big sport bar. We used to have, like, Larry Bird would come in, and a lot of the big,
wow,
professional players would come in, but it was an oldies bar.
Did you hit on Larry? Did you hit on the big bird man?
I'll tell you what. I was not impressed. He got a little feisty with me when I wouldn't let his younger brother in because he was wearing jeans. And do you know who I am? And I basically told him, yeah, I know who you are, and I really don't care who you are. The rules are for everybody. You, your brother, everybody. So,
You told Larry Bird, the legend, off?
I wish I could tell you what I really said.
You can't.
Hey, this is an explicit podcast.
Hey,
you can tell them.
You can say we are here for you, Cheryl.
That's right.
I'm going to remain somewhat of a lady.
Okay. Right.
I can imagine, though, being Italian, your last name ended in a vowel at that time, Nici. So I'm pretty sure you had some choice things for him to say that got his attention. Is that fair?
That's fair. I'm always very nice until somebody becomes disrespectful with me. Then I will communicate with you on your terms.
There you go. Did you ever run into Larry Bird again?
Nope.
He's afraid to come back.
I ain't coming back there.
Heck no.
Hey, well, you showed up, you said, like in June of 82. So tell us about the academy. How many people in there, how many women? Because what is unusual, 1982, and I remember that was actually the year of my first academy too, the state academy on the police department. Very, very few women in law enforcement at that time. So why was Richmond going all the way up to Massachusetts to recruit people?
Probably for the same reason as now. They couldn't get anybody to join. High crime, low pay, not the best working conditions. People are leaving in droves now. So they were doing a lot of recruitment from out of state. Gosh, I want to say 3 of my classmates were also from Massachusetts. We had some from New Jersey, Pennsylvania.
Damn, can you imagine getting people with Massachusetts and New Jersey together and trying to understand what the hell they're saying? It'd be like if I had 10 people from Tennessee and West Virginia in the academy class, Murph. Holy cow.
Well, you'd have something then.
20 teeth. I'd have 20 teeth between the 10 of you. That's
I
what
was
I'd
wondering if
have.
you're going to pick up on that.
Language was a big barrier for me when I got here. I remember going to the Paragon down there right by Monroe Park by the police academy, which at the time was in what we used to call the mosque. And I remember asking them what kind of tonic they had. And, they're sending me over to the display with Vitalis. I'm like, no, Coke, Pepsi, Mountain Dew.
I'm surprised you didn't ask him where the harbor was. Where's the harbor?
I know there was no harbor here.
Well, they had water down there. They had water near the harbor.
I talked too fast. It used to drive me crazy. Somebody'd be like, hi.
What'd you just say?
What'd you just say? So, but you get into the class. So tell us about your class now, your academy class.
Okay, we didn't start right away. We didn't start until probably around October, late September, October, because they were trying to put together a big enough class. I would say there was approximately 28, 30 of us maybe starting out. 6 of us were females. There were 2 females that did not graduate, did not make it through. 4 of us made it, and I'm here to tell you, and this is one thing I respect. We had to perform the same physical skills, everything that the guys did. No modifications, nothing. I was working out every day at the gym, trying to build my upper body strength. Couldn't get over that wall the same way the guys did. They would just literally fly over it like a deer or a gazelle. I had to grab it and scoot my feet up and then scoot my butt over, but as long as I could do it within the time limit and get over the 6-foot wall, it wasn't a big deal.
Now, were you like the smallest person in your class or pretty close to it?
Pretty close to it. There was another guy who was about the same size, maybe a little shorter, because I used to tease him and tell him that's what I liked about him. He was smaller than me.
That's always good for a man's ego, isn't it?
Just be careful how you use the word small when you talk to small guys. So,
We used to have study groups. We were really a very close academy because the majority of us did come from out of state and didn't have family down here or anything. So we bonded and would get together Friday nights and study, and then when we said enough was studying, we'd drink.
oh, I'm shocked. Cops in training, drinking, Murph. Does that? Are you surprised by that?
Extremely so. I'm sure that I've never seen that happen.
Never happened at DEA, did it?
Drunk every afternoon, brother.
Every other afternoon. So Cheryl, you guys go. So how long? So how long did your academy go?
About 6 months.
So was it all in the classroom, or did you get out? Did you do some ride-alongs or field training during that time?
Field training was pretty much right at the conclusion of the academy, but we'd go to the range. We did defensive driving classes, went to court. Prior to the academy starting, we did a thing called going through the divisions. We went through the different divisions and rode with a detective in juvenile, maybe a detective in violent crimes. We got to learn the inner workings of the police department, spend some time with emergency communications, work some shifts down there with them, observing. Technically, I guess, yeah, the majority was classroom, but the range time, had to teach us how to shoot, defensive tactics, a lot of different things.
That's all good exposure too, especially for rookies coming on. So when you do get in the academy eventually, and then you get out on the streets, you've got a really good working knowledge of what goes on in other areas, right? You know who to go talk to. You're making contacts.
Right. Learning how the police department runs, what is whose responsibility, who does what, who doesn't do what.
Who to stay away from.
Oh, yeah.
what's interesting is Richmond, well, and it still does, it has an issue with crime, and high crime and a lot of homicides. And in fact, you started in 82, but that was where a lot of people don't realize. So Patricia Cornwell, the novelist, she started her Kay Scarpetta novels, who is actually modeled after Dr. Fieri, I believe her name. Yeah, Fieri. I got to double check that. She was the pathologist for the Commonwealth of Virginia, but guess what? She was based right out of Richmond there. All of the so when you were on, right, it was a violent time in Richmond, wasn't it?
I think I still have the cartoon, the editorial cartoon somewhere. It shows this big ogre-looking guy that looks like Goliath, and he's got a little pop gun with a flag that says "Bang," and it says "We're number one because we try harder." Homicides, violent crimes, they were routine calls.
And how was that? How was that dealing with it? Where you came from, was it routine up where you came from in Massachusetts, or was that a little bit more unheard of?
It wasn't as prominent. We didn't, as a rule, have homicides in our neighborhoods. Lynn was a little more active, but no, it was different exposure.
Now I want to correct myself. I just double checked the name. I wanted to be sure I got it right. It was based on Dr. Marcella Farinelli Fierro, another good Italian name, Farinelli Fierro. So that's the one Patricia Cornwell based Case Scarpetta on. But anyway, so it's violence. So tell us about getting out of the academy. How long is it? How long are you in field training before you're cut loose?
You ride with an officer for about 3 weeks back then, and then you get assigned to your own unit and a precinct.
How did you go about learning the streets? Because, like you say, you didn't live there, you didn't grow up there. So, how did you go about learning your streets in your area? By the way, I understood you also learned where the jurisdiction lines were on your first night out, too.
Yeah, my first night out, I got assigned to work North Side, Unit 312, and I went to 7-Eleven to get my coffee, and had no idea the 7-Eleven was right over the county line in Enrico County. Of course, it took me a while to learn how to say Enrico, too. I used to call it Henrico, but
Or Henrico, or,
yeah, yeah. But I got my first call, and I'm like, 312, 10-4, responding from. And I was asked to switch over to Channel 4 and told to stay in the city by the supervisor.
oh,
They just say, yes, boss.
hey, man, real quick divergent story. But when I was a Salina cop, we had a couple guys used to get involved in some chases. I think more than their fair share, but anyway, but one of them one time and back at that time, the dispatchers were police officers. And one of the guys that we had working as a dispatcher, a guy named Ron Downing, I remember him just well, had a wicked sense of humor. So one of the police officers one night, it was a guy named Don Poor, ended up becoming chief of police in Paola, Kansas. But he chases this guy north out of town, into the county, almost into the next county. And he comes back in because they start losing radio contact because our radios weren't designed to go, that far outside the city. So he comes back in, he says, 901, can you call me? And he goes, yeah, what area code is that? I might have violated the sovereign territory of the city of Salina a few times, going places. But everybody did. The thing though, when you were a trooper, we used to meet some of the troops across the state line in Colorado, over in Lamar, Colorado. And had a sergeant tell me, says, I can't, I'm telling you officially, don't do it. If you do it and you get into an accident, just make sure you drive back across the state line and hit a tree in the state of Kansas. We can explain the damage. Anyway, I digress. Back to our regularly scheduled podcast. So you go for 3 weeks of training and now you're cut loose. What's it like on your first night out?
Oh, it's exciting.
Is this what you'd been waiting for? Is this what you'd been living for, to be a full, it's not, special police is one thing, loss prevention, but it's like, but you're full-fledged police. You got the badge, you got the gun. As Clint Eastwood said, you got the love of Jesus in your pretty blue eyes. You're ready to go out, kick ass, take names. So how did it really feel?
It was great. It was like my dream come true. Again, being a female entering a predominantly male profession, I remember my mother saying, oh, you'll be back. You're never going to make it through the academy. And what she didn't realize is those words were a big part of what helped me get through the academy. Because every time I felt like giving up, every time I had to push harder to run faster to make my timed mile, I heard that little voice of hers going, "Oh, you'll never make it through the academy. You'll be back." And I'd be like, "Ugh," running as hard as I could, and I'll show you kind of attitude. My dad, on the other hand, he thought it was the coolest thing in the world that his daughter had even said patrol man on my badge, was a patrol man. He just, another point that they didn't agree on in their 23 years of marriage was, little Peanut becoming a policeman.
Yeah, it's funny the things that keep you motivated during times like that, isn't it?
And I've never been a quitter all my life. My thing is you're a winner as long as you try, and when you give up, that's being a loser. You try, if you make it, great. If you don't, at least you tried. So on either hand, you're a winner.
And everybody's going to hear just how much you decided not to give up here just
Yeah,
a little
that's going to
bit.
be important here a little bit later because we tease this a little bit in our intro when we're doing this, but we're not giving away a lot of the details because that's Cheryl. As Merce said at the beginning, we don't tell other people's stories; we let them tell the story. So you are working the mean streets of Richmond. What's if you do remember? What's like one of the first major incident calls you went on that you remember? I mean, where not just a parking ticket, but where shit really hit the fan, something really bad had happened.
There was so many of them, but there's one that will probably stay with me forever. You guys can relate to this. There are those cases that God, you wish you could forget, but that haunt you for the rest of your life. We got a call. This is when I was working down in the fan district. Guy that I went through the academy with, he was the log unit, and I was there as a backup. I want to say it was late at night, early in the morning, like somewhere between like maybe 11 p.m., 2 or 3 a.m. And it was called in as a B&E in progress, breaking and entering in progress. So we get there, there's three of us. We kind of, again, we're like a family down there, unit 314, 315, 317, 318. We all show up. We've got the perimeter. It's in the basement apartment. And the officer who was the log unit, he starts to go into the building. He's got his weapon drawn. He's prepared to go down into the basement apartment where there's obviously some sort of trouble going on. And all of a sudden, the suspect runs up the stairs. We hear our coworker yelling, "Everybody get down, everybody get down, put your hands where we can see them." So we leave the perimeter and we go to start to run into the building because obviously he's got his gun drawn. Something's going on the first floor. And the suspect jumps from the porch, jumps one flight of steps onto the landing, which is where I am about the time I'm running into the building. He bumps into me. He goes brawling down the second small flight of steps onto the sidewalk with me right on top of him. I'm on top of this huge guy, and I remember thinking, shit, what do I do now? Right? Luckily, my coworkers were nearby. We get him cuffed. Everything's good. It was a very small, frail female victim. Her husband had passed away approximately 1 year before. She was maybe 5'2", 5'3", not very heavy, maybe 115 pounds. She was 42 years old. This guy, it turned out, was reportedly involved with a drug-related friendship with somebody on the first floor. He had seen this small woman going down into her basement apartment several times. He broke into her apartment. He raped her. He robbed her. He beat 7 teeth out of her
Oh,
head.
jeez.
It was just horrible. I kind of befriended the woman. I ended up downtown in detective division with this guy. He's on the floor. He's banging his head on the concrete floor. I put a phone book, a Yellow Pages phone book, under his head and told him, "Oh, no, no, no. We're not going to let you hurt yourself. You're going to court." And I also spoke with her at the hospital. She goes to trial. He's all suited up, expensive, fine clothing, expensive attorney, and Maury Janis, God rest his soul, was the attorney. And Mari Janice is trying to present to the jury that this woman hadn't been raped. By her own admission. She hadn't had a relationship in over a year. Of course not, her husband died. Okay? And along comes my client, while not a great profession, a good looking young stud, with a service to offer. He didn't rob her, she refused to pay for services rendered. He didn't knock 7 teeth out of her head. They fell out when she fell from the bed in the heat of excitement and passion. It was unbelievable. This woman got raped again on the stand and in the courtroom. So that was a hung jury.
You got to be shit. Hold on. I get that you have to have a vigorous defense. That you want a defense attorney who's going to do their job. But even then, at some point, you can't buy that. You can't buy into shit. I can't believe that they can buy into shit like that. Like, yeah, in the heat of the passion, she got the crap beat out of her, lost 17. I don't care how good you think you are. I've never heard anybody that good that they make somebody lose 7 teeth.
You got to remember, too, though, back then, Richmond, a jury of your peers, we used to call it a jury of your fears. So she had to go back through trial again. And this is the irony. The second jury gave him 1 year for each tooth he knocked out, but that's all he got was like 7 years. Somehow they had gotten the burglary tools excluded from testimony, so we couldn't prove the B&E. And when I tell you this was a textbook, perfectly secured crime scene, everything was done like 1,000% in compliance. And again, I felt that victim had been victimized by the system. And my main motivation for getting into police work was to protect people, kind of like that bully buster, to help people. As time went on, I found myself kind of shaking my head and going, I'm becoming desensitized. It's like I'm tired of getting here too late, when the bodies are already here and they're dead, when the woman has been raped and violated, when the elderly couple have been robbed and beaten. There were times where we prevented crime, where we were able to help people before the fact, but those came few and far between as a patrol officer, which usually was getting there to take the report and turn it over to a detective.
And in that lady's case, like you said, not only was she go through the physical act of rape, but then she had to go through two court proceedings, and the fact that every occupation, career path has its scuzz buckets, and that attorney was leading the pack down there, his defense attorney. What a piece of crap.
Oh, I actually got called in to the captain's office because after the second trial, I told Mari Janice in the elevator, just me and him on the way down to the ground floor of the John Marshall Courts building. I said, I hope you choke on the prime rib that you buy with the dirty money you earn defending people like him. And I hope that he's never in your neighborhood some night when you're working late and your wife wants a prostitute services the same way that my victim did. I was very upset. I was angry. I hurt for that victim. So I got called into the captain's office and said, look, I get it. I understand you feel that way and everything, but Nici, you can't say that to the attorneys. If you need to say it, come in and say it to me. Okay, consider yourself advised with a warning, stay away from Mari Janice.
I think we'd all agree that, when you go to court, it's like you said, when you follow the rules and stuff, you do things the right way. Look, the chips fall where the chips fall, right? So if you've missed something, if you did something incorrectly and they excluded evidence because of mistake or procedural error, you try and always do it against that. That's one thing. If you're going to lose a case, I want to lose it because of the merits, because I either did or did not do something correctly, but to lose it, on the fact that somebody see that's the other thing that's bothered me. I want vigorous defense attorneys because one of these days maybe it's me there, and I want to make sure, hey, I've got somebody vigorously representing me. But I don't want somebody making up a bullshit story that they try and pawn off as fact to say, well, she just called a prostitute service, and she just, I don't care. It's almost one of those things is that we don't use our common sense and good judgment anymore. And it's almost like when you get, there are bad prosecuting attorneys too. There are prosecutors who hide evidence, who don't follow disclosure rules. It's not just on one side or the other. But when you get to somebody like this that just manipulates it to the point of where they're telling this story, as long it's one of those things, if you keep telling it over and over and over again, the jury starts going, well, reasonable doubt, and that's what they got hung up on. I'm sure was just kind of some reasonable doubt, but fortunately, again, we wish we could get the outcome that was deserved in every case. We know that doesn't happen, and 7 years is simply not enough for what this guy did to her.
One good thing that came out, God bless her, she was able to move on with her life. She moved out of there, which I encouraged her to do. It would just, she could never sleep there again or feel safe. I would go by and check on her when I was working the street. However, with the DNA and the evidence obtained, they had several other sexual assault cases open that to me would have been far more questionable. He was found at the scene. All the evidence, everything was secured. I don't even remember how or why they were able to exclude the burglary tools, but at the end of the day, it wouldn't have mattered if he walked in the door and the door was open. That was irrelevant.
That's irrelevant. It's just whether or not you charge him with burglary, but the rape is rape. Aggravated assault is aggravated assault.
Robbery is robbery. He took $500 of her money against her will. Now you fast forward, there were several situations where he met young women at bars down on West Grace Street and was invited back for a drink and did not understand the meaning of no, or allegedly followed people home. And he got more time for those cases than the 42-year-old woman asleep in her bed. Go figure.
Well, see, just common sense tells you right away is that guys might have to pay for it. But I mean, and I'm not being flippant, let's be honest. I mean, women would not have to pay for it in the same way guys do. And just being on the jury, you would have go $500. I mean, look at this dude. Dude, you ain't worth 500. I'd want some change back plus a refund,
Have you had any more run-ins with that guy afterwards?
No, I haven't. Actually, ended up working with one of his relatives later on in life who knew who I was, and I didn't make the connection. I often wondered what happened to him. He was reportedly dealing drugs, and that's how he had the connection in that building. And just not an all-around nice guy at all. But that's one of those cases where I didn't feel that justice was served.
Well, justice isn't perfect, and that's the whole thing. But there's sometimes you wish, man, we need a do-over on this one. The only thing that does happen sometimes, every now and then, karma does catch up with these guys. We can only hope it did with him. Well, let's move on from that a little bit. Let's start talking about too. Is I want to kind of start setting the context for your shooting and what happened. And part of that is you had been on, for a few years. And as we all know, Richmond cops make bank. They make a ton of money. You don't have to work any extra jobs. I mean, you guys are just rolling in dough. Let's talk about the financial situation, what you had to do to kind of make ends meet down there, because obviously the pay wasn't great. So how were things set up for you folks to be able to survive? What kind of extra duty did you have, side jobs, things like that?
Well, when I first came on, I want to say the starting pay was $8,946, and we got a increase up to about $12,000 by the time I was out of the academy.
That's more than I was making in 1982.
You must have been unemployed.
It felt like it, yeah.
Here we are, and you got to have a reliable car, you got to pay your rent, you got to buy groceries, all your bills and stuff. So we all worked off duty. So I did a lot of off duty work. I enjoyed my off duty jobs. I worked at the Greyhound station. Oh my goodness, I worked downtown at the Marriott. I worked some of the bars. Just, you know, the Stonewall Cafe on Main Street back in the day. I would work there. So a lot of the jobs, if you wanted off duty, you had to sign up on the availability sheets out of the chief's office. So I had signed up to work at the Marriott that had recently opened. I still remember their billboards. The Marriott, alive with excitement. Hey, yeah, it sure was the night I worked there.
Well, before we get to that night, let's talk too because there was an incident that happened with one of your coworkers on an off-duty job. He ended up getting shot, which kind of created some complexities in terms of how the department handled their policies. What happened on that one?
He was working security at a bank, and during an active bank robbery, he was shot in the line of duty. Thank God he wasn't killed. But between his case and my case, that led to the city changing their off-duty policies.
How soon before your shooting was this guy shot at the bank robbery?
I can't remember exactly, to tell you the truth, but it was.
I mean, was it like within 6 months or a year?
It might have been within the past year.
And what were the issues with the city? They didn't want to cover medical costs or what?
The city is self-insured.
Oh, there's your answer right there. Anything they can do to save money.
Absolutely. It's like even now, they have a policy that an officer has to be wearing their body armor, their life vest. It doesn't matter if you get shot in the leg, you get shot in the arm, you get shot in the head. If you don't have your body armor on, they don't have to cover you. Yeah, I was responsible partially, at least, for a couple of policy changes in the city. You know me, always looking to affect change. I like positive change, but
There you go.
Hey, I might have been responsible for a few policies and policy changes during my tenure. One of those things, man. Hey, look, if you're not the lead dog, the view's all the same, man. I always wanted to lead the pack. If we're going to change something, I want to be at the forefront of it. So let's kind of start setting the context now for what happened with you, because you've signed up now. So tell us about the off duty. When did they? And now let me ask you quickly before that, on the off duty, did you guys normally work off duty on the same days you had work, or did you just mostly do off duty on your weekends or on your time off?
oh, you did it whenever you could. A lot of times, some of the officers would leave their regular assignment, go to an off-duty job, then go home and sleep. Sometimes you slept, sometimes you didn't. Sometimes you caught a nap in the hole. Sometimes you'd work a couple of off-duty jobs on your day off. And back then, we were working rotating shifts.
Oh, geez. That's horrible.
Tell us about what did you do for rotating shifts? How were your shifts set up?
Okay, you would work like 7 days of day shift, which could be, 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, 8 in the morning. I believe back then it was 7 or 8 in the morning, and it was 8-hour shifts back then. Eventually they went to 10-hour shifts, the 4-10. Then you'd be off a day or two, and then you'd come back evening shifts, 3 to 11, 4 to 12 for 7 days. Then you'd have 1 or 2 days off, and you'd come back and work 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. or 12 midnight to 8 a.m. for 7 days, have a day or two off, and start it all over again. And it was always fun when you worked the midnight to 8 or the 11 to 7, and then you had to go at 9 a.m.
For
and
court.
sit in court all day.
And then only to sit in court to have them go, oh, we cut a deal, you can go home, or we're going to postpone this. We finally had a motion to postpone. And are you kidding me? You didn't know this yesterday? You know what I used to do though, especially with it. Well, I don't. Okay, if they're listening,
Go ahead.
If they're listening, they're not going to like this. But several of us got tired, especially when I was a detective. Of you'd work your ass off. It'd be long days. You'd show up, be there 9 in the morning, and you'd sit around for 2-3 hours only for the county attorney to come out and say, "Hey, look, we're going to make a deal. You can go home." When did you know that? Come to find out, a lot of times this was worked out in advance. They just wanted us there just to be sure. So I started calling them at 2 o'clock in the morning, say, "Hey, we're going to need you for a search warrant." Then I'd call them in an hour, say, "Hey, we're still working on it." Call them in another hour, say, "Hey, we don't need you. You can go back to sleep." You do that a couple times, it's kind of like, okay, we got the message. So they started getting better about it. They said, "Look, just as long as you're available, if we need you, just got to be there, like in 30 minutes. I said, "We can do this, but this shit of waiting around when you've worked all night, waiting around for another 3 hours." Well, do you think of the overtime? Dude, after a while, the overtime ain't worth it when you're not sleeping or you get home, you got 2 hours of sleep. Then you want me to go back to work, put on all my gear and make critical life-saving decisions with lack of sleep? Okay, there's
Right.
a recipe for danger.
And keep myself and my coworkers safe in the process too, especially,
Right.
you know, in a place like Richmond. You've been in court all day on a Friday. You got to go in and work the evening shift Friday night, first of the month, and a full
Which
moon.
nothing happens in Richmond, right?
Yeah.
It's quiet. What do you mean? Just a couple people out, a couple of misguided utes.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
I love I love that you just mentioned the full moon because that's absolutely true.
Oh my God, there were many times I would stand in the parking lot and just howl at it right along with them. Arr.
My wife was she was a registered nurse, and it was the same for them on a full moon. The crazies came
People
out.
think it doesn't matter, but let me tell you,
It does.
we may not believe in it, but the point is they believe that it causes something, and that's what happens. It's a full moon. Let's go out and do something. You know why? The other reason
Yep.
too, it's a full moon. You can see. I mean, you don't need, if
True.
you can see. You don't need a whole lot of extra light, right? By the way, Murph used to keep a lot of his coworkers safe. They wouldn't ride with him. If you've ever ridden with Murph, you take your life in your own hands. So Murph contributed to
What are you
officer
talking
safety
about?
by being a one-man car.
What are you talking about? I'm a good driver.
I scared my defensive driving instructor. I grew up in Boston. I knew how to drive in the rotaries and all of that. So
You
yeah.
mean in the traffic circles?
Oh, rotaries.
The
We
traffic
call them
circles.
rotaries.
You are not in
Roundabouts.
You're not in
Roundabout.
Massachusetts. You're in the Commonwealth of Virginia. They're called roundabouts down here.
Yeah, but you know what? One thing I've noticed is every car you ever see that comes out of Massachusetts has
Yeah.
damage on it. It's like you guys play roller derby or something, going down the streets and bounce off the sides.
I tell you what, though, the people I had the respect for. I was over in India doing some work with the part of the government over there, and we're in Andhra Pradesh province, and we're over at New Delhi and places like that. And one of the guys we're riding with, he doesn't look out to his right at all. He's just in his car looking out to his left, and I'm going, "What the hell are you doing?" He goes, "Car on the right, not my problem." But the thing was, they had very few accidents. You'd see them going through those traffic circles and the round, and it's like very few accidents. And I'm like, and you see, I told them, I said, we're actually in New Delhi, and you see people jumping off buses and dodging cars and doing stuff. I'm going, dude, I said, with all of these gymnastic capabilities, how come you guys aren't crushing it at the Olympics? How come you're not winning gold medals? He looks at me and goes, "Oh, my friends, in the Olympics, there are rules." Good lesson to learn.
That's
Good
a
lesson
good
to learn,
point.
Robbie.
Good
Robbie
point.
Tangarala. But yeah, but anyway, again, we digress. We're having fun here. So let's go back and talk about your off duty. So you go into the chief's office, you sign up for off duty. Now, do you get the choice of where you work, or do you get assigned based on what's available?
You look at what's available, what jobs they have, where they need people, and you put your name on the sign up sheet, and then they pick, who gets assigned. So all the jobs weren't like that. Some of them had their own on site supervisor, like the Stonewall Cafe. At the time, that was Lieutenant Rick Pleasance. He was supervising that, so you'd let him know, hey, Rick, this is my Lieutenant, this is my availability. And then he'd let you know, what shifts, if any, he had you working.
So that lieutenant that would kind of run the cafe like his own little. He was the supervisor for bringing people on for the job. He kind of was the. It was like his own little patrol district.
If you will, yeah.
All right. So was so then when you got assigned to Marriott the night of in October there of 1984. Was that by choice? I mean, did you sign up for it and get what you asked for, or did you get assigned to that one?
I put my name on the list as available and wanting to work it, yeah. And at the time, it was Sergeant Haywood, I believe, was coordinating who got assigned and everything. So yes, he worked out of the chief's office. So yes, I was assigned to work that night.
But prior to that night, though, this is where let's set the context now, because you just didn't show up to work like there was nothing going on. There was something going on in Richmond and around your area that you guys had been advised of. So let's talk about what was the context for this and what you guys were looking for when you went to work off duty.
Well, on duty or off duty, Wednesday, October 24th, 1982, this incident started in Petersburg. A man by the name of Kenneth Wayne Woodfin, at the time, he's now been convicted of all the crimes, had reportedly killed his wife, left her body shot multiple times in the Petersburg cemetery, gone back to his mother's home in Blandford, abducted his sister-in-law, Susan, had her drive in his now deceased wife's blood up to her apartment at 111 North Strawberry Street, where she lived with one of his best friends, who ironically was the son of a Goochland County deputy sheriff. He killed both of them and then headed back to Hanover County. On his way home, stopped at a red light, he ambush attacked and attempted to kill Wilford Bubba Warsham, a deputy sheriff, who was also a canine unit at the time. So this is over the course of October 24th.
Hey, and Cheryl, let's stop right there for a second. You said 82 earlier. I know you meant 84, but
84, yes, thank you.
yeah, no, it's you got a lot of stuff going on. But let's talk about Bubba, because the dog saved what you told us, and I didn't realize this. You're saying the dog saved his life that night. How did that? How did the dog save his life?
Oh, absolutely. Bubba, if I remember correctly, was stopped like Route 54 at a red light. Woodfin pulled up next to him at the same red light, and it's late at night, and all of a sudden the dog sensed danger, and he started running around in the back and barking. And Woodfin had aimed for Bubba's left temporal area with the gun, but Bubba had turned around in the driver's seat to focus on the dog and see what was going on with the dog, and ended up getting shot in the shoulder and the arm instead of his temple.
Isn't it amazing? I mean, canines are highly trained anyway, but these canines become so. I mean, they're so attached to their handler, and to the deputy or the police officer who works. I mean, for them to sense danger like that, that's the stuff that's always amazed me about these really highly trained canines is what they're really capable of.
Yeah, so that dog did save his life, and he was able to get on the radio and say he was shot and, you know, give a description.
This all happened on October 24th, right? This all happened in one night, the three killings and then the shooting of the deputy.
It was very late night. I don't know if it was exactly October 24th, 1984 when he shot Bubba, or just past midnight, but it was in that same time frame.
The initial shootings were all pretty close in time together.
Oh yeah, it was like a killing spree. And just to backtrack a little bit, this whole bizarre thing had started when Woodfin and his wife's apartment in Hanover County in Ashland was hit with a search warrant. Woodfin was arrested for drugs, porn, weapons. The wife was attempting to get away from him and out of the marriage at the time. Anyway, after he was released on bail, which was further down the road, then his wife, I believe his wife cooperated with the police and said, look, protect me, help me, got to go off the grid. I'm terrified. I want out of this marriage. This is not who I thought I was marrying. And if you had met Woodfin before any of this other stuff went down, attractive, well dressed. I believe he had his bachelor's degree before I had mine. Um, Likable, textbook psychopath. Fits all the criteria, although, as my boss would tell me, you're not qualified to make that diagnosis. But just a lot of similarities. So, fast forward, Woodfin gets out. All of a sudden, he's angry. His wife has left him. He goes down to Petersburg to a release from jail party for his half brother, who's just got.
Now, can you explain? Can you explain for the listeners where Petersburg is in relation to
Okay,
Richmond?
Petersburg is about 20, depending where you're coming from, 20, 30 miles south of Richmond, called the Tri-Cities area.
Right on the interstate.
And it's kind of a mini version of Richmond. High crime, a lot of poverty, a lot of need for services. And Ashland is actually 20 miles or so, maybe north of Richmond.
Yeah, it's just right across the county line, if I remember right. Right?
Pretty much. Depending where you're going.
Also on Interstate
Yeah,
95.
95 takes you all through there. Yeah. So they do the search warrant. He's arrested. She's arrested. She gets out first because she's cooperating. He takes this personal. I mean, it's like he wants some. It sounds like what he wants is some kind of a revenge, and he doesn't care who he gets it against. But he believes there are certain people, and like you say, what you said about psychopath, I want people to just put a pin in their head and think about this because later on, part of his defense will be something that goes back to the case you talked about earlier. Such a bullshit defense, that it's just could not be believed. But kind of go back to that. So he's taken this personally. He wants to take it out on somebody.
Right. I'm not even sure she was ever charged or the charges could have been dropped. She fully cooperated. She's like, I'm not living there. But he gets out and he is taking it very personally that his marriage has ended. He doesn't like the police. He blames the police for his marriage ending. He blames her family for helping her.
He blames everybody but himself.
Absolutely. So anyway, I guess all that shooting and everything, he's tired. He takes the 25th of October, 1984 off. And at work, I'm given a wanted poster that shows a picture of him and his wife in a portrait sort of thing that was done. And then another picture of him as a wanted person. And we get briefed. We're told, he's to be considered armed and dangerous. We got to get this guy into custody. So anyway, we're all running around. We have our wanted posters. We're looking for this guy. We're patrolling. No sightings. Pretty quiet night. Everybody from Petersburg up to Ashland and probably other areas were looking, trying to find Woodfin.
Cheryl, did they know at the time that Woodfin was also the one who shot the deputy too? Were they able to make that connection?
Yes, they were. Because what happened was when he shot Bubba Warsham, Deputy Sheriff Willard Bubba Warsham, we called him Bubba. Warsham called it in, and police cars came from everywhere, took care of him, but they were able to locate the vehicle. It was late at night, not much traffic. Ashland, this wasn't a whole lot of traffic back in the day anyway. Woodfin bailed out of the car and disappeared into the woods. So they were able to retrieve the vehicle that had his wife's blood on the passenger seat, fingerprints, etc. It was her car that he had been driving. She and her sister had gone down to that release from jail for his half-brother's party to retrieve the car. Her sister Susan had driven her down to Woodfin's mother's house in Blandford in Petersburg, figuring that would be a safe venue for her to be able to get her car back. And that's when he abducted the wife, drove her to the cemetery, murdered her, came back, got the sister-in-law, and drove her to Richmond. So after he did the killings in Richmond, He's on his way home and he encounters Willard Bubba Worsham at the red light and tries to kill him, but things didn't turn out the way Woodfin wanted. So they have the car, so they know. You've got probably every police officer in the state looking for this guy because he'd shot a cop, he tried to kill a cop, and he'd murdered 3 people. One of
Did
them,
they know? Yeah, I was going to say at the time, when did they first discover the murders? And I just wanted to make sure I get the names right. So Susan Whitaker Hall, Frank Gavin, and Jean Whitaker.
Jean Whitaker Woodfin was the wife.
Jean Whitaker Woodfin, right? And then
Susan Hall was the sister-in-law.
right, and then Hall's boyfriend Frank Gavin, right?
Frank Gavin Jr.
Who was also Woodfin's best friend, right?
Reportedly so, yes.
God, I hate to be his enemy then.
With friends like that,
Jeez,
right?
no
So,
joke.
when did they first discover the homicides? Was that before or after Bubba had been shot?
Actually, it was afterward. The wife's body was found, I believe it was the next morning, the 25th of October, 1984, in the cemetery. And then the officers went to 111 North Strawberry Street. I can't recall whether it was to warn the sister-in-law or why they were there, but that's when they found the 2 bodies, is when law enforcement showed up at the sister-in-law's house on the 25th. It's believed that possibly Susan Hall didn't pass away right away. I believe her body was found outside.
So it's safe to assume then at the time that Woodfin shot Bubba, nobody knew about these really, and even Bubba, there's no way he would have known about the killings at that point. So you start going, you hate to guess what's in somebody's mind, but he's already killed 3 people by that point. Do you think he was just looking to rack up a body count, or did he think the cops knew and he needed to take out the cop before the cop spotted him?
That would be a good question for him to answer if he was willing to take any responsibility or active part
Nah,
in any of this.
he won't.
I would, my speculation, based on what I know, is that he blamed law enforcement for his marriage ending. If the police had never hit the house with the search warrant, his wife would still be with him. The police, he had a brother-in-law, Henry Boshin, who was a sergeant on Richmond Police Department, married to one of his wife's sisters, and they lived in Chesterfield. He blamed him, again, the police, for interfering with his marriage. Henry and his wife actually had put Jean Whitaker Woodfin, the wife, up, and they were hiding her out. She was staying with them, safe.
Or so she thought.
Again, she went down there with her sister trying to retrieve her vehicle, thinking it would be a safe way to do it, that
Yeah.
he wouldn't do anything to her at his mom's house.
So what happened? Did he just kidnap her right there?
Reportedly, they went outside to talk and he abducted her. I don't know whether he had to get something out of the car or exact details, of course, and those are things we'll never know. But he abducted her reportedly from the party, took her to the cemetery and shot her several times, and then went back and got the
What a
sister-in-law.
jerk.
So I mean, you guys now, by the time you're working your off-duty detail, you have all of these details. You know about the homicides, you know about Bubba being shot. So like you say, everybody's kind of on high alert. So tell us about what kind of a day that was for you before you worked your off-duty job. Did you work a regular shift or were you on days off?
I believe I had worked a day shift because I vividly remember getting a call to assist with traffic down by the Marriott at 500 East Broad Street. They had the fire department there, and there was some sort of a explosion problem or some sort of a threat that they needed to make sure the building was safe. Then, I went back to work later that night.
So what time did you show up for your what time did your off-duty shift start, and what did that consist of down there at the Marriott? By the way, You and I talked about this before. I've stayed at that Marriott. I know exactly where it is you're talking about. I know where the parking area is. I mean, it's just, I was down there for a conference about 3 years ago, and it just, I didn't know about you at the time and the shooting at the time, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going, yeah, I know. You know all of these areas. It's just, you start putting this all together. So let's talk about that. So what time did you show up, and what did your duties consist of there at the Marriott?
I had to start, it was either 5 or 6 o'clock, between 5 and 6, if I remember correctly. They were having two main events that evening. It was the University of Richmond, the U of R homecoming, and an Episcopalian ministers convention.
Which one do you think was going to be more rowdy?
The ministers convention. I was assigned and requested to stand outside beside the female valet parking attendant. She had a little podium, and she was taking keys and, taking cash. And I was supposed to be greeting people coming in, making everybody feel safe, and making sure that they had a little drive-through, if you will, that the vehicles pulling up either to let people out or for valet parking, that traffic continued to move and nobody really blocked the entryway.
Hey, and Cheryl, on these off-duty jobs too, what was the expectation? Was the expectation is that you were there just as though you were on duty, as a Richmond police officer, like you were there to enforce everything, or was it kind of one of those things as your off-duty gig? That's what your focus needed to be. In other words, they didn't want you getting pulled away to do other stuff. How did they ask you to act? When you were doing off-duty work?
Off-duty work, you was still a police officer, but you were being paid. Well, the city was being paid by the site you were assigned to work. And that was basically, if you will, your beat. That was your assigned area. You did not leave your off-duty job or that site for any reason.
And you were expected to take any kind of enforcement action that it appeared in front of you in your off-duty job, or did they kind of say, "Hey, or did you guys just work?" Sometimes when you're off-duty, it's like, man, if I started writing tickets every time somebody jaywalked, or illegally parked, I could be out here all night. What kind of a discretion did you use when you were off-duty?
Usually you were there more as a PR person, public relations, to ensure safety of the people at the establishment or the event. If, let's say, I was working a bar and a fight broke out, I would be expected to intervene, break up the fight if need be, make an arrest. You didn't deal with the trifling things like, well, I didn't anyway. And most didn't, like, jaywalking or spitting on the sidewalk or, if there was a domestic dispute, you attempted to intervene, advise the parties, break it up. But no, you were expected to take whatever enforcement you needed to protect the people at the event.
Yeah, in other words, you didn't go looking for trouble, but you didn't if trouble happened in front of you, you went in ahead and handled it as though you were on duty.
Absolutely.
And I know we all get this, but I think what's interesting for a lot of folks too, who are listening in, is that a lot of times you think some might think that, hey, if you're working off duty, you're still not a cop. I mean, you're just working an off duty gig, and the realization is, you're a cop 24/7. I mean, you've got the powers of arrest 24/7.
Absolutely, you've taken an oath to serve and protect. I remember when I was a rookie, there was a violent domestic happening in Ronco County where I was living at the time. I didn't just keep walking because I'm not working. You had to carry your badge, your ID, your weapon with you. That's changed a little bit now, as I understand it. But back in the day when I was a police officer, absolutely 24/7.
Hey, players, that was the end of part one with Cheryl Nici and being ambushed by a spree killer. Part two is going to contain a lot more information about the investigation, what happened to Cheryl, and her recovery. In the meantime, make sure you wait for that episode, which will drop on Thursday. Part two will drop on Thursday. Also, go visit us at gameofcrimespodcast.com. Our website got a lot of good information over there. Also, visit us at Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. And most of all, make sure you go visit us at patreon.com/Game of Crimes. Remember, we've got a lot of good stuff coming up. December 22nd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to do a Facebook Live event where Murph and I are going to be giving away what we normally reserve for our top 2 tiers on Patreon. We're going to be doing our live Narcometer review of the world's greatest Christmas movie ever made. That's Die Hard. Make sure you go to our Facebook page, Game of Crimes Podcast, and join up. Get ready for it. We'll send the invite out. But December 22nd, 8 p.m. Eastern, the world's greatest Christmas movie ever made. Stay tuned for part 2.